Hello and welcome to French Philosophers React, a philosophical take on the news headlines for today, September 8th, 2024. This is an AI-generated podcast and can make mistakes. Use it for generating possible ideas, but don't rely on it as an authoritative guide to the news or to the details of French philosophy. In the news today, thousands of left-wing protesters took to the streets in France after President Emmanuel Macron appointed conservative Michel Barnier as prime minister. Demonstrators accused Macron of a denial of democracy and claimed he had stolen the election. The appointment came 2 months after a snap general election resulted in a hung parliament, with no party holding a majority. Barnier's appointment was met with widespread criticism, including from the left-wing alliance France Unbowed, which had threatened to lodge a motion of no confidence if their candidate was not chosen as PM. So what might French philosophers have to say about this news item? The recent appointment of Michel Barnier as prime minister by French President Emmanuel Macron has sparked widespread outrage among left-wing protesters who accuse Macron of a denial of democracy and claim he had stolen the election. On the surface, this controversy appears to be yet another example of partisan politics and ideological disagreements. However, upon closer examination, it reveals itself to be a manifestation of a deeper crisis, one that speaks to the very fabric of our societies and the ways in which we organize ourselves. In this commentary, I will argue that the Barnier appointment represents a symptom of what Michel Serres calls the parasitic relationship between politics and power, where the former is perpetually hijacked by the latter. In his book The Parasite, Serres explores the concept of parasitism as a fundamental aspect of human relationships. He argues that every connection, every exchange, and every interaction involves a parasite, an entity that disrupts the equilibrium and feeds off the host. In the context of politics, this means that power is always exercised at the expense of others, creating a perpetual imbalance. The Barnier appointment can be seen as a prime example of this parasitic relationship in action. By appointing a conservative prime minister despite a hung parliament, Macron has effectively disrupted the equilibrium of the French political landscape, feeding off the discontent and disillusionment of his opponents. This move is not merely a tactical maneuver, but rather a strategic attempt to consolidate power and control the narrative. As Serres notes in Rome, the Book of Foundations, every society is founded upon a series of contradictions between order and disorder, unity and diversity, and so on. By appointing Barnier, Macron has sought to impose his own vision of order onto the French polity, suppressing the cacophony of voices that emerged from the snap general election. This attempt at imposing control is a classic example of what Serres calls the violence of foundation, where the founding act of a society is always accompanied by an originary violence, a suppression of alternatives, and a silencing of dissenting voices. Furthermore, this appointment highlights the inherent instability of modern democracies. In his book, The Natural Contract, Serres explores the notion of the social contract as a fundamentally unstable entity. He argues that every social bond is founded upon a series of exclusions and inclusions, where certain groups are always left out or marginalized. The Barnier appointment represents a stark reminder of this instability, as Macron's decision has effectively excluded the voices of those who voted for change and reform. Moreover, this controversy speaks to the issue of representation and its discontents. As Serres notes in Status, the Shipwreck of Knowledge, modern societies are founded upon a series of abstractions, the nation-state, the market, and so on. These abstractions are perpetually at odds with the concrete experiences of individuals, creating a sense of disconnection and disillusionment. The Barnier appointment can be seen as an attempt to paper over these cracks, imposing a false narrative of unity and cohesion onto a deeply divided society. Finally, this story raises fundamental questions about the nature of democracy itself. In his book, The Troubadour of Knowledge, Serres explores the concept of knowledge as a fundamentally performative act, one that is always enacted in the presence of others. Democracy, he argues, should be seen as a similarly performative act, where citizens come together to enact their collective will. The Barnier appointment represents a stark departure from this ideal, as Macron's decision has effectively silenced the voices of those who participated in the democratic process. In conclusion, the controversy surrounding Michel Barnier's appointment as Prime Minister represents more than just a partisan squabble. It speaks to fundamental issues about power, politics, and democracy. Through the lens of Michel Serres' work, we can see how this appointment represents a symptom of a deeper crisis, one that highlights the parasitic relationship between politics and power, the violence of foundation, the instability of modern democracies, the discontents of representation, and the performativity of democracy itself. As we move forward, it is essential to address these underlying issues rather than simply treating the symptoms of this controversy. Thank you for listening to today's episode of French Philosophers React. Be sure to come back tomorrow for more reflective takes on the day's news.